I didn't want to learn because maybe you're back.
You are the one.
Was. He's kind of.
Checking on it, making sure.
Yeah.
There has to be.
I think I went in here.
I'll reach out to them. Do you have any?
Can't see you much there.
Let's. Come on. Oh, you can X that out. Yeah, you just.
Mine or me? Nice.
Yeah, you can.
It's just a notification that it's being closed.
It's gonna go from.
Also, it does a nice job. It does a nice job.
It looks beautiful.
It's good to go.
You're hot.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to call the planning board meeting of June 12th for the Newfields Planning Board order. I'll begin by introducing who's present. My name is Jamie Thompson. I'm the chairman of the planning committee. We have John Hayden. We have Michael Price. Jeff Kuchar. Jeff Feenstra. We have Bill Mazur. Sue McKinnon. And we have our illustrious town planner, Glenn Green. Now begin. We have a preliminary discussion about the Bingham Junction. Don, are you ready to present?
Wonderful.
Sorry, you passed these out. So they did.
I gave him one shot.
Blue. Okay.
Go.
So that's updated.
It's slightly updated. Yeah. Sure. Of course. Yeah. Yeah, this is nothing. So I just wanted to come in tonight. Glenn and I talked about whether or not I needed to go for a site plan review. I think I don't want to speak for him, but I think his thought was I did not. But I'm trying to be extra cautious, obviously, with my role on the board. And I looked at the fact that this was rezoned by this group commercial, because we tried to bring the property was residential in Newfields and commercial in Newmarket. If it was still residential, adding a barn is no problem according to our regulations, or an outbuilding. The barn that I'm adding is already on the approved site plan. It's the same size, and just relocating it from, instead of putting it in Newmarket, I want to move it into Newfields. The reason I would make that change is I can put better solar where the barn was going to go. So after I had the solar people come out, they said it will be I'll get much better coverage there. The barn fits just barely, but does fit within all the setbacks. So I don't need anything. I don't think the ZBA. But because it's commercial and this is a different town than it was approved in, I think it raises a question about whether or not it should have a site plan review. So I just wanted to be transparent on that. And obviously the board can decide if that is or is not the case. And Glenn, you might want to provide additional context like you provided me in the email on that. But essentially that's it. There's no new disturbance, no new square footage. I did put together a stormwater plan. Just again, if I wasn't on the board, I probably wouldn't have done it, but I want to set the right example to make sure you're being thorough. So there's that. I provided a document with how I'm going to propose to handle the construction and the stormwater. Anyway, so that's pretty much the entirety. Any questions I'm happy to take, or Glenn, if you want to make any commentary.
Yeah, so Sean did ask me what my perspective was on it. And my perspective is residential use is allowed in that zone. My understanding is this is going to be used for your personal use.
Yeah, the only nuance, again, just to be fully transparent, is the primary objective is going to be to let the snow groomer for the Newfield snow raiders, which is a nonprofit. It's not exactly like I'm not doing it for commercial use. I'm going to let them park it in there, and they're going to then move the trailer that they have down there to make the view a little better. So I'll store some of my own things in there and let them store the groomer for at least a few years.
So that was my perspective on it. I didn't think that he was required to do site plan review. for a barn that's going to be used for personal use. But he, through the entire process, very clear, he wanted to make sure he was doing the right thing, so the discussion with the board is the right thing.
Anybody have any questions?
So use is going to be non-commercial. And I'm curious
The only
about,
thing you can say though, if I ever sold the building, I don't think that would be where somebody might do something that could be like, because it is in the commercial zone, somebody could store something in there. I have no intention of selling it, but that should be done.
it should be, and it also raises question with regard to buildings and lots and accessory buildings to the primary use of the lot. And so I guess if this board were to consider the fact that this is to be used residentially, I suppose in the future, if someone did want to use it commercially, then they would have to come before this.
It would be a change of use. Be a change of use.
The question was access. So is this gonna continue to get to it? Or how did, because this is a wall,
It goes-
is it correct?
That's a wall. It would be, the access point would be two ways.
Yeah.
Behind the building.
Okay,
Okay, so you have a door on this side.
Yeah.
And then the snow bloomer, I don't know if anybody's been down there lately, but I bought a big section of the old Longfellow Bridge. That stone wall was the actual Longfellow Bridge. Illustration.
Really? Oh, my God.
it looks,
When you spend too much money, spend more. But those big metal posts on there are, the big metal posts there are the center line rail that would go in Cambridge. I have two for the entrance in the front and two for where the groomer would go in and out. So I'm gonna create a metal gate there. Of course, it would be open for the groomer to get on the trail.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I just was curious where it didn't show on the plan, like what the access part would be. Question, thank you.
So back to this whole discussion about the use of the barn. Is there any way that it's made to be known that that barn is for personal use and isn't connected to any of the buildings as a business? I mean, how does someone know buying it?
Yeah.
And
I'm not limited by that in, the current approval in, because it's currently on the site plan in New.
right.
So it would be a real consideration for me if I would, well, I would understand why that limitation might be applied. But if it was applied, I may choose to just leave it in Newmarket, because it probably does create better value for the future property. To your point. So like I can't, because I would want somebody in the future to be able to say, I can have this great space and this great building, how am I going to use it?
Sure.
So since we're having this discussion, sort of brings up that prospect of what would happen, whether the barn was in Newmarket or Newfields, with being two separate buildings, and then what the uses could be in conjunction with our zoning, because I have always been under the impression that our zoning would allow for primary use of a commercial property and then accessory buildings that are only accessory to the primary use. So this being discussed, what could be the ramifications if that's not somehow defined?
I mean, because it already shows on the commercial site plan, and then this would constitute a shift to the site. We could do an amended site plan process with notification to abutters and the whole 9 yards. That seems like overkill to me. But because it's already an approved building, what Sean is actually requesting is that he be allowed to use it for a non-commercial use.
Yeah, I get all that. So, and actually, I think that may sort of answer the question. I'm assuming that Newmarket probably allows for multiple use on a particular lot? Some, I'm not familiar
My
with
assumption,
zoning, but
my assumption was that if we saw it, doesn't mean we should. This is gonna have to be accurate. Was that somebody might use that as like an office building and then have storage for their business, so it would be one business. So I think that is reasonable. I never thought that I would be able to get, another unrelated business in there in the market. Maybe they would allow it, but I never thought of.
well, and I think that was the point of my wanting to have the discussion was just because like our zone was pretty clear about the primary use of accessory buildings to the primary use. So something like what you described would make sense. But maybe it's a matter of the fact that the buildings are not in the same municipalities that would eliminate the issue. I don't know. Is that probable?
That since the commercial activity resides on the other side of the town line. Yeah, I mean, that's actually a good determining point. And we could go on record. But without having a public process, there's no way for us to key it to this building. So, because we could, if we had the public process, we could simply say, this is an amendment to the site plan.
Right.
This is shifting a building from Newmarket to Newfields, and the use in Newfields is not going to be commercial. And that's all, we could put that all in the record for that, at that process.
Now, that wouldn't necessarily handicap Sean down the road if you
No.
sell the property, correct? Because then a future buyer could come into the planning board and say, I want to take this building and use it commercially.
Use it commercial.
Then why not go through the process and make it an accessory building to the business now? And use it for whatever you want. No? Is that,
Oh, have it remain as commercial, but use it private.
and then everything's taken care of, and someone buys it, they can use it for commercial because it's something like that.
It's a good point. If I'm going to come, well, this is great reason for the guidance site. If I'm gonna go through a site plan, I might as well seek to get that element if possible as well.
And there's no question in the future.
So for sewer and water, are you putting sewer and water in this? And then is the septic system designed to handle more for this building?
No sewer and water in it whatsoever. So it's gonna be, radiant in the slab and electric over there, but no other utilities. Not even a wash basin. That could obviously change in a different owner. It is on town water in Newmarket. And I have a septic that could, the septic, it's on that plan. You can see it. I think we have the capacity for another bathroom, but I'm not putting one in. And as you know, it's more likely than not within the next 3 to 5 year period that Newmarket and Newfields will have some kind of connection of septic, at which point the sewer system. And I'll tie in and probably take the leach field out.
I guess that was my, why you can't connect into the new market? Isn't it down?
It doesn't make it, it makes it to the start of the golf course, right at the top of that. Everything, water comes down, the septic doesn't pump through. Newmarket, the gentleman from the ballroom has been pushing that initiative to try and get it done. I think Newmarket's been waiting to see what Newfields would have to do and who will pay to connect it eventually. So I think that's why it hasn't. I think that's why it hasn't gotten done.
I guess the reason why I bring it up, I would think that you'd be thinking, hey, I might go commercial and want 2 bathrooms, size of septic now. Because if you go and say, I want to do that, you got to put the pipe in, you know.
Right.
And I don't think it would be a huge change in septic system.
Yeah, smart.
Got to be ready for it.
Yeah, that's smart.
Is the septic system in already, Sean?
It is.
It is, yeah, okay, yeah.
Septic's in, internet.
Okay.
Great sound system is in.
All the important.
This town is done.
I think I like Mike's thought. It's just, why don't we just approve it as a commercial accessory use, right? And say, so you don't have to come back and visit us again. Although we like seeing you, but
So that would
That would take a public.
We'd have to have another meeting.
That's up to you.
But all we would need is this plan and public notice.
Does that put a kink in your plans?
Oh, no, I'm fine. That's no problem.
It would seem,
Barn's been cut. I just need to get it in before the fall. Sitting up in Norway, Maine, waiting for us.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you just need to decide what direction you want to go. Whether you want to just continue on with the residential use, which I think is accurate, you know, what Glenn's take is that it can be done without need of any further.
So if I'm comfortable with residential use, the approach would be just go to a building permit, understand that limitation, communicate that limitation, should I ever sell the property? And the person would then come in and seek to have some change. Or if I want to take the time, notify abutters, come back, proper meeting. Great, that was exactly.
I mean, if the board is really concerned, we can record an affidavit at the registry of deeds attached to the deed that says the barn on this site is residential in nature. And any other use of that would require, a trip to the planning board for site plan. That affidavit would get called up anytime someone asked for the deed at the registry.
the title search would show that up.
Yeah, it becomes
But that's a good go.
associated with the deed.
Another option.
So I mean, I think you've given me the guidance I needed, so I'll think about what option I want to go with. Appreciate the feedback and time.
Appreciate you coming in with us.
So Kobe, do you have any comments from outside?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The game.
All right. Pleasant Street Trucking.
Does everybody agree that that doesn't require any planning board activity?
What is it
I
there?
know what it is.
What is it?
All the guy wants to do, I mean, I get in the middle of this, is there's a sign down here that says Home Fashions. He could change it to Verano and
All right.
came in here and, why? But I think this kind of brings up this little form we talked about.
Yep.
The Keisha and Sue can just fill out what you want and probably send it to you first and, stop.
Because I don't think there's any place for us in that.
No. I think on those signs, the only time we got involved was when they placed them on 108 and the state came back to us and said, hey, you can't do this, right? Then they were low or something and they made them take them down.
Well, they couldn't put them on the utility poles. Isn't that what it was?
You couldn't post on the actual main street.
Oh, is that what it was?
Without that, and we had kind of made that as a condition of our permit, so we had kind of needed to readjust.
Just trying to avoid that end of
Yeah.
the entrance for trucking.
Right.
I mean, if it is signage on a state road, then that's who they deal with, DOT. And I think DOT has a cost for that. And then they're perfectly happy.
Yep.
That's my understanding. It's why you don't see very many.
Good.
They're welcome to change that sign at their own expense.
It's between them and, yeah.
Yeah, and if they're doing it on the state road, they'll probably have to notice the DOT. Okay, CIP update.
I want it to be done before I get night, so. That's the game plan.
I feel nice.
You the kid, and I am not smiling.
We could put it another way.
I love it. We do aggravate me sometimes.
I know.
Loves all boats.
Any other questions on CIP? Board minutes. Last week.
Saw the pictures of the barricades he put up temporarily. Did you guys see that?
Yes.
The powers that be, yes.
Yeah.
That's what it was titled. So you send this to powers that be.
The Jersey barriers.
Yeah.
Oh, did I send you those pictures he sent?
Yep.
So what's up with the mobile station? Did they ever respond? Did we ever request?
I'm sorry. I didn't call
Huh.
them. I didn't call
Hmm.
them. It's okay. We'll.
Sorry, how about?
Well, no, I'm not sorry you brought it up, but I'm sorry that my response was very clear.
The technical term.
Well, not really.
About the fire truck? What?
Yeah, thank you. We will work on the fire.
Actually, you took the file and you still have it.
I do.
Oh, geez.
I do.
Is there a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I wasn't here, so. But
For a second?
I'll second that motion to approve the minutes from May.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Oh, quick as news.
Jamie, can I bring up something about the RPC in April sent out a couple of documents, and I'm the MPO member on that. So one of them is the 108 bridge is now off construction. It's supposed to be constructed in 26. Now it's back to a study phase. I think they put, there's been, I think, so every year that gets moved around. The other thing, they put out a safety action plan, which I think is kind of timely with us talking about, I guess it's talk about traffic out here or something like that. So the safety action plan is like 110 pages, it's extremely thorough. It takes accident data, desired data from communities, and it takes the whole, regional plan. And this did not make it on that action plan. And that kind of goes into, I think I was listening to some of the discussion about this is every year, every 3 years, DOT updates the 10-year plan and we send them our priorities. And I think pretty consistently it's been addressing sidewalks, bikes out on 108, rebuilding Main Street, including drainage, and then addressing the intersection of 85 and 87. It has never made it to even the top 50. I think one thing I wanted to point out was when we were putting the sidewalk plan together 15 years ago, I walked with the DOT guy because the sidewalk plan includes going from the end of the railroad bridge out to 108, then all the way up to the rest of 87, I think up to Partridge Hill. And one of the things he pointed out, he called it the low hanging fruit, that things the town can take care of for safety. And one of the things was parking across the street. And the town, I guess that was previous people said they didn't want to address it. So I know that's on DOT's things. If Newfields wants to make their roads safer, they should be thinking about this low hanging fruit. The other thing I walked it when we were doing the drainage, I think it was a year before last. And the DOT guy pointed out to me, if somebody parks a car on the corner of 85 and 87 and DOT, their response was, why doesn't these are the things Newfields should be doing something about enforcement. And it was also pointed out by DES that there's an erosion problem caused by that car. So I just throw that stuff out there. That's what I got from DOT. And we do as a planning board, put these priorities out there every 3 years and they update DOT and it changes widely monthly almost. I get a tip report every month. So, it's not like it hasn't been thought of by this board that's a concern, that intersection. which kind of leads me into, I think, did we ever get Garvey's money for sidewalks? I think we should be thinking about the piece of sidewalk from Meadows up to Old Lee. Because we need to spend some of that money, right? We
You do,
make a clause.
engineering was all done for that.
Right, so I think, I mean, and if there's a safety point in this town, I go out there in the morning, I think that's a point we should be thinking about as a board, is to try to, I think there's like 30 or 40,000 left in the sidewalk fund. And we're supposed to use that money for sidewalks. So I think we should be talking about it, you know, which would be talk to DOT like we did the last time when we first put the first piece in.
Yeah, because we did go to DOT, we got the whole plan, and then when we brought it, the select board, which I was on, voted not to put it on the ballot, but we should, you know, maybe think about getting it back on. And at the time, it was about $110,000 to do that next section. A lot of it was because the rock wall needed to be moved back.
A couple big trees.
But that was the next section. So, you know, we have 40,000, but you're right, we will lose that money if we don't do anything with it. And it's definitely something we should do.
And I think if we're talking safety, in my mind, that's a safety thing. I go out there and you drive on the morning, there's people walking their dogs out, like jump out in the bushes, and that would complete what we talked about, these access loops. I would give a loop out to the rail trail through Old Lee. It starts making a nice loop for pedestrians and bicycles. So I think, you know, we should jump on it now before we're sitting here in September or October. I think we should just be thinking about that.
Why? What was the explanation? Which project falling off?
I don't want to say publicly. It's to do with money and where the money is going to come from. I think if they feel it could come from somewhere else. So, but I know they did survey and initial study, and then I don't know what they found, but there is $651,000 in there for additional structural studies. So I think that's what's going on there.
It's appropriate to make a comment.
Sure.
Just to bring it to your attention as another opportunity, it might not be the right one. When you go into the woods that, what's the street that Charlotte is on down here?
Baker Street.
Is it?
Baker Street?
Okay, on Baker Street, where you go into the woods and you get into the nice loop and the conservation land. That abuts railroad land. That's about 43 and 25 acres, 2 parcels. That goes to the DOT land, which is only 1 acre, and that intersects with the rail trail. So if you were trying to make a conservation loop for this town, the railroad is pretty open to towns creating nature walks on their property. So a nature walk could connect the rail trail to downtown through Baker Street, following your path all the way out to Old Lee and back down. And that would create a really nice connected community. So just an interesting idea. I reached out to them to try to purchase that land, and they didn't want to sell it right now, but they were seemingly open to other uses and work with towns. So I don't know, hopefully when you're speaking to them, that's something you can inquire about.
And you have the society land in between, sort of sandwiched from district property, society property, railroad property, DOTs on the other side of the tracks.
Yeah, so I don't, it's totally landlocked, right? It's a land that I think is contiguous, but could never really be used for anything.
There's no access to it. It would be wonderful if the railroad would consider either somehow making a deal with the society to add it on to the Smithwood lot. That would be great, but yeah, I mean, that would be the access to it, would be through the Smithwood lot, through the society. Or the rail trail.
Yeah, both. Yeah. Could be really nice.
Yeah, it is a big piece.
Walking. Yeah, it's pretty and it's accessible to people downtown. So in terms of safety and getting people in the woods and in a nice loop, that could be a really great project for Newfields at some point.
I think the Smithwood lots very underutilized. I don't think a lot of people really know it exists, and that's a nice, this loops around each side and then the main trail down the middle, and that connects out to the rail trail too, so.
That's the kind of stuff Conservation Commission is supposed to be doing, right?
I assume.
Good idea. Go ahead.
That is that I have seen activity out there quite frequently, 1 or 2 cars parked at the end. And the parking could be improved, which certainly for better use. But people from the village going down walking the dogs, I've seen that. Periodically ride my bike over, go out there to get on a rail trail, get a connection. Just observation.
I know that the sewer department is working with the society to do some test drilling of wells to expand our well field for the district. And part of the sort of negotiation process is to sort of provide some compensation one way or another. And the discussion is that the district would allow for some flexibility in building parking for the society to have not a huge lot, but 5, 6 cars, something like that. With some accessibility off Baker Street.
That would be an improvement.
Yeah, we're hoping. I mean, it's part of the, I guess, charter for the society is to mitigate land for water for municipalities, I guess. I didn't know that, but that's in their charter from back in 1930 or whenever they formed. And so they're very accommodating to the district to do that exploration. So we're hoping, we'll have some success out there because the district needs water.
The DOT has a very poor parking lot across from my building. So they didn't finish it. They don't have the funding to do it. They cut it, but we had to cone it because people were getting stuck. And they did a really bad job. But in the event that they finish that, and there was that trail, that would also alleviate the parking situation. But I think that's been the request for 20 years, I've heard. So,
I think when you're talking DOT, when the worst place on Exeter Road is at the Word Barn, then what have they done?
Yeah.
Right. So that's with some simple money, I think they could put something out there. But so to think other things are going to get done is, this action plan, everybody, there's, I think, 1,800 actions throughout the, so, we're just a little, and some of them are pretty, that's a priority over anything we have.
Anybody have any other business to come before the board?
Just bring up for future is back to our schedule of dimensions in the ordinances. We discussed making it more clear where setbacks start. And it describes the edge of the road, the edge of the pavement. Or right, but it doesn't include the statement property line. And then it's given a little bit of trouble that that specific issue hasn't been in court. But it would behoove us to have a rather clear definition, particularly in the village, because our, I guess, subdivision regulations make some more clarity, but that's not something that the building inspector looks at when he's seeing something that is not planning board approved. And so our dimensional chart with its notes is what he has to go by. It's not quite as clear as it should be.
We're dealing with that on the board right now on an enforcement issue. And specifically as to that, one says to the edge of the road, the other says the right of way. And we reviewed the notes, what was that, Sue, from 23? November, December 23, I think it was, for the planning board meetings. So it's not really a solid leg to stand on at this point to address this issue, this setback violation that we have. So we're kind of, without a little more research, we're kind of in the process on being able to address this matter and come up with because of the lack of clarity.
Did you look at under definitions 2.1.21? And it talks about lot and lot lines. A lot, it says a horizontal distance between the front and rear lot lines, the property lines, the lot line separating the lot from an accepted public street, the lot line opposite. I think when we went through this, when we changed it, we went through this and we said, how much clearer do you need to get than what it says here? Short of, I don't know. I've read this several times, and then the definitions that we changed, I don't know what better we could do.
Is this what subdivision regulations?
This isn't our zoning definitions.
Zoning definitions. And so it's zoning definitions, okay. That's a good place for it. But the chart should reflect or set you back to looking at the definitions.
Yep.
Yeah.
That might, yeah, just
I mean, that would be helpful, like.
Well, we talked about this, Ken,
Yeah.
and we said, well, are we going to do that on everything? So somebody's going to go and say, well, you told me over here to go back here, but you didn't tell me here to go back here. So, I mean, it's their responsibility to go through the ordinance, not us to have a little, that diagram of, if we start doing that, they're going to catch us on something else. And I think it's pretty clear. Glenn, I thought the last time we made the zoning changes, we were all like, how much clearer can we be? And you used a state definition of lot and right away, I think.
I don't have my notes with me on this because property is specific, but there was a definite conflict between what was in the zoning and site plan. I think it's site plan regulations. One talks, includes the right of way, and the other doesn't. And so if somebody in the situation where we're dealing with it, he goes, well, right away, that doesn't apply because it's a go.
I was understand clear because I don't know what the circumstance is, but ordinance is ordinance for definitions of what's allowed. Site plan is for.
You want to go into more detail on that? Okay, because I don't have, honestly, I did not expect to have it, so I'm not.
But I mean, I don't know that the.
Well, one thing, I think, John, if I recall correctly, and this is just blind right now, because I haven't looked at it recently, in the past couple of days. One talks about right of way, and the other one says the edge of the street.
Yeah.
And we've got a violation with the right of way, but not with the edge of the street. It's minimal.
It is both, but it's minimal from the street and it's significant. In that case, it happens to be the property.
So I just see confusion, and again, forgive me for not being prepared, I didn't expect the addresses. But are we using right of way, or are we just using the edge of the pavement? I think there's a lack of clarity there on what controls. But again, I'm spitballing here because I don't have my notes with. Does that make sense, Joe?
Why don't you and I sit down?
Okay. There you go. That's what I'm saying.
Instead of this,
Yeah.
why don't you and I sit down and then I can bring to the board if there is a change, if there's something that needs to be in subdivision or site plan, that we can do anytime. You don't have to wait for town meeting. Just hold a public hearing. So
Great.
why don't you and I be?
Yeah, I'm kind of hit a wall here. I'm trying, in the past week, trying to figure out how to move on this.
How about Tuesday morning next week?
What time?
Should we open here? 8:30?
Works for me.
8:30? Why don't we just do that?
Okay. Work for me, because that solves that, takes that out of the question marks. Perfect.
Yeah, I think if you look at 2.1.31, this is what we put in. I'm sure you looked at it. It says, for purpose of this Newfield zoning ordinance, right of way and public street mean the same thing.
Right away.
This is what we added in 24. For the purpose of the Newfield zoning ordinance, right of way and public street mean the same thing. So it's, yeah, we knew there was right of way. And we were clarifying that it was just the street. So I think that's the language we changed. And then somewhere else, I think we put the definition of right of way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we did add it.
Yeah, we should.
We'll work it Tuesday morning. And then we got an issue where it's ties to the curb. I mean, why? And so it's like, how do I go to eliminate it, that they be able to get something to work with on this.
Yeah, so
He has to pick.
We hashed this out pretty extensively, and I think at the end of the discussion, before we put the amendments to the voters, the decision was to keep it simple, not overcomplicate it. And we made some minor adjustments, and we talked about it over the course of several meetings. And I
did me through, John.
and I believe in the end, we all concurred that the amendments we put forward would prevent any issue.
but if there's present language in subdivision or site plan that muck that up, we should make those clear.
100%.
That's something we can do anytime.
Yes. And if the town, the governing body voted for an amendment that hasn't been modified or adjusted in the ordinance, that could be a problem and could be solved by way of correcting it if it had been voted. We had that issue with some other zoning items in the ordinance that have been voted on and amended but not changed in the ordinance.
Yeah.
And so we went back and changed them because we found the ordinances, the amendments, the voting, the process.
Is it signed stuff?
It signed stuff and subsurface. We had some subsurface that had been omitted completely out of the ordinance, which is sort of what raised the question of what's happening here. And then we did some research and realized that it was an amended change and the town's people voted in favor of it, and it just never got put into the ordinance.
An administrative issue, really.
Correct.
There's one other thing I just remember. I think in the pavement width is difference between subdivision and site plan. I think it's 20. I mean, there's a couple minor things that just need to get.
Should be.
So.
Anybody have anything else to bring before the board? Adjourn.
So move. I'll second.
All in favor?
30.
13, 14%. It's set up on staff. He's got, you got my phone number, right? You send me the contact.
Looks pavement.
You got my phone number. So, it's technical. Yeah, sorry. I got it.